This is, I think, our seventh episode, coming to you from Atmore, Alabama. I'm here today with my two co-hosts, Lloyd and Ronnie, and we have a guest on the phone. Glenn is calling in from North Alabama, Cullman, Alabama, actually. He's going to tell us a little bit about his riding. What'd you say, Glenn?
I said hello.
Oh, hey. Yeah, I was just going to explain to my vast audience here that you're going to be telling us a little bit about riding up in North Alabama. Welcome to the show, Glenn.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, to begin here, I'm going to let Lloyd and Ronnie, as they cogitate on questions they may want to ask, they might interrupt us here real quick. But I mainly want to hear from you about North Alabama riding and you personally, how you got into riding and what kind of riding you do.
All right, sounds good. Now, I came to riding late in life. My parents wouldn't let me have a motorcycle. I was jealous of all the boys in the neighborhood who did have dirt bikes, mostly 50 cc's, 100s, 125s. But after I spent 10 years in the Navy, and when I got out, I took the Motorcycle Safety Foundation beginner rider class. I think I was about 29 at the time.
Uh-huh.
And I went and bought a Honda VLX 600. I rode it for about 4 months. I was living up in Virginia, and it gets cold in the wintertime up there, so I winterized it and put it away. And the following fall, I said, this is too small. I went and traded it in on a Shadow Spirit 1100. And I had several cruisers over the years, and then around 2012, I saw a magazine ad for the Yamaha Super Tenere, and I sold I was riding a VTX 1800 at the time, and I sold that and went and bought a Tenere, and I've been doing adventure riding and sport touring ever since.
Now the Tenere, I have a friend up in Asheville, North Carolina, who has a Tenere. That was your departure from cruisers over to a totally different riding style, right?
That's correct. It was very tall. When I was at the stoplight, I'd be on my tiptoes.
Yeah.
So it required some adaptation, but it got me excited in riding again. I guess I probably didn't really have a lot in common with the cruiser community at the time. I was younger. I wasn't riding a Harley. It felt like an outcast.
So you didn't ride bikes? You said you were in the Navy. You didn't ride motorcycles while you were in the Navy?
No, never really had a chance. I was deployed a lot of the time. So, but I apologize for the train. We've got a train coming through Cullman right now. If you hear the background noise.
Yeah, we got one here too. You'll probably hear it here shortly. Not too far away.
But no, I guess so. For about the last 8 years, I've been riding adventure bikes. I've a Super Tenere, and I currently have an Africa Twin. And I've also had a couple of sport touring bikes. I've had the Kawasaki Concours 1400 and the Honda's ST 1300. I like both riding styles. I think a lot of the sport tours, they tend to be a little bit shorter, so my knees, as I get older, my knees can't really handle the bit position as much.
Right.
So I like the adventure bikes mostly because of the ergonomics. You're sitting more upright.
Yeah. What they call a standard.
Everybody knows.
Yeah.
Yeah. With the sport bikes, a lot of times they're leaning forward. It's a little bit harder on the neck for us older gentlemen. And,
wait. You said older. Well, you were in the Navy for, you said 10 years. You don't mind asking, how old are you?
I just turned 50 last year.
Oh, okay. Well, you're still quite a bit younger than us.
Oh, our children
yeah,
are your age.
Yeah.
Yeah, our kids are getting to that age.
Well, I'm old enough now. A couple of years ago, a friend let me ride his VFR 800, and it was a lot of fun. It was a barrel of monkeys, but I couldn't ride in that riding position for more than about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
With the sport bikes, you're leaning way forward. It's an aggressive attack position. With the cruisers, you're leaning way back. A lot of times your feet are all the way forward. But with the adventure bikes, you're sitting more upright. And
right.
I prefer that. I prefer that for the ergonomics, and also, it just makes it easier to to shift around, and I like riding dirt roads, and a lot of times you have to stand up and shift your weight from left peg to right peg. So
guys who ride cruisers primarily don't seem to understand that need for standing up, and I don't know, sometimes they think of it as like something you just do for showing off, but that's it's a relaxing move, you know.
And some states even have I understand some states will even pull you over if they see you doing it, you know, accusing you of being a hooligan or something. But,
right.
You know, if you're doing it through town, you're just trying to show off. But it's nice being able to stand up on longer trips, for example. About 4 years ago, 10 of us rode from Birmingham to Key Largo, Florida. It was 820 miles, and we did it in one day. And trust me, it's nice being able to stand up and take the pressure off your behind.
No kidding, yeah. Wow. So, tell us a little bit about.
So you had asked also.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well,
you had asked also about riding in North Alabama.
Yeah, that's what I was about to touch on.
Yeah, I think, you know, a lot of people who aren't familiar with this area are kind of surprised when they see, you know, we actually have lots of hills and even, you know, some mountains here. I call them the toenails of the foothills of the Appalachians. You know, they're not tall mountains or anything, but we've got some curves and some hills here, and we don't have as many dirt roads as you have in the South. I'm jealous about that. We have to go out to Bankhead Forest to get some dirt roads, but it's very forested, and a lot of the back roads you almost need a dual sport or an adventure bike because the gravel's the asphalt's in such poor shape.
Yeah, well, I prefer riding on the street mainly because of my age, and if I'm by myself, I don't want to be out in the woods somewhere in the dirt and I can't lift the bike up and no help's going to come, that kind of thing. But if I've got people with me, I don't mind going, you know, through the dirt roads and Forest Service roads and stuff like that.
Yeah, it is harder to lift a heavy bike when you're on dirt, you know, because, you know, you have less traction. But that's actually one of the things that I enjoy about it. I think riding dirt has made me a better rider on the street. It's made me comfortable with not having all the traction that I might want, right? So if you're riding in the rain or, you know, if a lot of times at stoplights, you know, people's cars sometimes drip oil, and so you can find yourself even on pavement in situations where you don't have good traction, and having a little bit of dirt experience makes you a little bit more comfortable with that. You can still fall, but, you know, it's unnerving when you first start riding on dirt and you realize that your tire is slipping all the time.
Well, I think you learn your limitations better. The limitations of your wheel, your tires, your machine. You know.
Right.
I see guys who had early training in dirt are much better riding on the street. They're more confident in corners and stuff.
And I think even some of the MotoGP riders, when they're not running their road races, a lot of them are riding dirt, you know. And if you watch the MotoGP, especially, there's a lot of YouTube videos that show the MotoGP riders coming around turns, and their rear wheel is turning faster than it should. You can tell that it's slipping. They're drifting through the turns.
Exactly. And, I've seen that
so
too.
So they, you know, a lot of them enjoy the dirt training also, and they see some overlap between dirt and track riding.
If you were going to go out for a casual ride in the afternoon, to say you got some time, like 4 or 5 hours, where would you go normally? Do you have a trail system where you go and ride, or you primarily just off-road street somewhere? I generally go either west or east from Cullman. If I go north, I end up in Madison, Huntsville, which is very congested. If I go south, it's generally towards Birmingham. But if I go out to the west, there's a lot of curvy roads with very little traffic out there in Bankhead, and then there's also the dirt roads. Going to the east, I get into Blount County, St. Clair County. Blount County still has, I think, 5 covered bridges. It's fun to ride through a covered bridge.
I enjoy riding 2-lane country roads that are curvy, very little traffic, but yeah, just relaxing. Unfortunately, in the spring when they're putting down the manure, it's not as much fun. But
I've come across quite a few of those. I guess they're trailers. Where they're hauling livestock up in West Virginia hills, and it's just covered with manure of some kind. You got to watch out for that.
Yeah. The only negative about North Alabama is we have a lot of chicken houses, and they can get ripe sometimes.
Yeah, well, that doesn't affect your traction on the road though much.
It can distract you though.
Yeah, I suppose so. Woo-wee. Yeah. Well, what? Anything else y'all have any questions, Lloyd?
What did he say? No, I do have one question. I owned a bike back in my 30s. It's been 40 years or so ago. And, of course, my brother Ronnie here was a state trooper, and he stopped me one time for speeding. I didn't know it was him because I was all wrapped up. And he comes walking up behind me shaking his head like, what kind of idiot would be like driving this thing like 90? It's like 10-degree weather.
Plus, he was reading a book while he was doing
Plus, I was reading a book. But I got pretty good confidence in those days. Later, my wife and I, my current wife, we've been married about 10 or 12 years, and we first got married. She said, can you ride a motorcycle? I said, well, I used to could. She said, well, her friend Shirley and her husband, they ride a lot. And could we get a bike and ride with them? So we bought a pretty big old Harley. And I never really did get my confidence up, especially with her on it with me.
Sure.
Dropping it and stuff. And we had some fun with it and finally sold it.
Managed to stay out of the hospital.
But I said, well, I only got a few good years left anyway. I don't think I'll shorten them. In fact, I sold the bike to a guy about 10 years older than me, and he ended up crashing it. He had some dirt and totaled the bike out.
Oh, man.
But what I was going to ask you and Philip, you're talking about standing up. Now, what you call an adventure bike, what do you call it? I have a son that rides these really, it looks like he's got on a spacesuit.
Sport bikes.
That's a sport bike. Yeah. I mean, they go like real fast up in Colorado and all that. So the one you are talking about standing up on, that's what I would call a crotch rocket, where you normally bend over the tank. You're talking about your neck.
No, I would call those like the sport bikes. There's sport bikes, and then there's super sports, and really they're kind of the same thing, except they have a tremendous amount of horsepower. They don't have saddlebags. They're typically just for short riding, day rides or riding on the track. A lot of people will tape up the headlights. If you tape up all the lights, you have to switch your coolant to straight water. You can't have any coolant in your radiator. There's all kinds of rules for riding on the track, but a lot of folks will modify their sport bike for riding on the track. And with the adventure bikes, though, you've probably seen like the BMWs. They have the big square saddlebags made out of metal or aluminum.
That's like my 650 out there. Okay. Yeah.
You can ride a long way on those, huh?
Yeah, and adventure bike is what used to be called like a standard. You probably remember what was Honda's bike? The Nighthawk. Remember the Honda Nighthawk?
Oh yeah.
It wasn't quite a sport bike, and it wasn't quite a cruiser. It was what the industry called a standard, which was basically just an upright seating position, not leaning forward, not leaning back.
That MSF school up in Georgia used that Nighthawk as their as the bike the students rode.
Yeah. So the standard is kind of morphed into the adventure bike. They still make some standards that aren't really adventure bikes, but an adventure bike typically has more ground clearance. It's taller. It's got a lot of them have like the square aluminum or metal saddlebags. BMW is probably the leader in there. Yamaha came out with the Tenere to compete with it, and then Honda came out with the Africa Twin. KTM's gotten into the adventure bikes now also. It's probably one of the fastest growing segments right now.
Yeah. I find myself leaning toward those, except most of them are too tall for me. That's why I have a smaller bike. I have a smaller.
They are tall, and what you see is people like them for the ergonomics, but as they get older and maybe not, some of the adventure bikes like BMW's got their 1250, Yamaha's Super Tenere is a 1200 cc. These bikes are 600 pounds before you put luggage on them.
Right.
And they have typically 32-inch seat height or so. So a lot of people are, not flat-footing these things unless you're over 6 foot tall.
Yeah.
But as you get older, it gets harder to pick them up. It gets harder to maintain your footing. Like if you stop on a dirt road, it's very easy to lose your footing and fall over.
Yeah, I've done that before. And,
yeah.
I got my luggage and bags all packed. I'm ready to go, and I pull to the end of the driveway, and boom! I'm like that comedian on TV where you just pull up and fall over.
Yeah.
Well,
so there's been a lot of people who enjoy adventure bikes have been asking for smaller, lighter bikes, and KTM came out with their 790 last year, and Yamaha is coming out with their smaller Tenere, the Tenere 700 this year. BMW already had their 650 and 750.
Yeah.
That they had the 700 and 800, which is now the 750 and 850. So you're starting to see more adventure bikes being offered in the mid-size category between 650 and 850 cc. So.
Well, Glenn, I hate to just cut you off here in the middle of this discourse. We're trying to limit our podcast to like 15 minutes at a time, and then we have the same guests back later on, for a further discussion.
Sure, that's no problem.
But so what we'll do is thank you now for joining us today.
Yeah, that was real informative, Glenn. Thank you.
Hey, no problem. And if anybody is interested in, we have an Alabama-wide forum called Motorcycle Alabama. It's motorcyclealabama.com. We have tech tips, and we have group rides and events. Like sometimes we have like a Gymkhana event to help people with we call it like parking lot riding skills.
Yeah. Well, thank you for plugging that, because I keep forgetting that. I'm on that forum myself.
Yeah, no problem.
So we appreciate you joining us, and we're going to say so long here for a
happy
while.
Trails to
happy
you.
Trails.
All right, sing it all together.
Happy trails to you.
Yeah. So,
or as the cliche goes, keep the shiny side up, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, Glenn. We'll be talking to you again sometime.
All right. Thanks, Bill. Lloyd,
okay.
Roger.
All right. Thanks for calling. Bye now.
All right. Bye-bye.
Our music today provided by The Lost European, a song called Robot Coupe, no vocal version, from XL Music Publishing, licensed under Creative Commons by attribution, creativecommons.org. Thank you.